It's a new split, and that means it's time for a new Euphoria podcast. I'm Drakos, joined by none other than Andrew Vedius Day, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about this week.
I've executed Cadril.
He's dead. He's just gone.
We fought in a battle for supremacy, and
Gurren just slipped you a couple dollars on PayPal.
I'm a tier 3 sub.
You walked into those 1v1s. You absolutely outplayed him by standing under your tower menacingly, baiting his ult in. It was a beautiful thing. Now, Cadril's out sick today. Hopefully he'll be better and fine and good. He was sick last night, didn't sleep super well, so he might even be feeling better already today, but we took him out, gave him the benefit of the doubt, gave him some time to heal, so don't be surprised if you see him grinding soullessly League of Legends. Why is that challenge a month long? We'll never know, but we're not here to talk about that today. That's a different subject. We are, of course, available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. Today, we're going to be talking about all of the summer season rosters. We're going to check in with LIDER and talk about the brand new Vitality, as well as give you our matchups to watch this coming weekend. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, we need to have a little bit of behind the scenes discussion because these caster ads came out recently.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, so I it's my pleasure to write for some of these caster ads, but anytime Betty's in an ad, normally I write like 90% of a script. You give talent like 10%, who's ever on the day to adjust to how they want to talk about it, to adjust the concept, the producer can adjust it to, whatever's going to work. When you write a script for Vetty, anyone out there who wants to write a script for Vetty, open call. You write like 60 to 70% of a script.
Even that, you kind of give a guideline.
Yeah, you give Betty a set and some props and a general theme or objective, and the man makes magic. You know what I mean? Like he just does, and it's a production nightmare, to be fair. I think he increases the timeline of any product he's on. But I want to know, with that in mind, because I'll tell you that Odomomne ad was banging, but that's not what I wrote at all. So what? Talk to me about your shoot experience.
Why don't you tell me what your pitch was, and then I will tell you what happened.
Okay, so the original pitch was we wanted to cover some aspect of content because we had this like VO thing and we had this like caster interview thing.
Okay.
Right? And so the original pitch was you're introducing Odomomne how to make picks to watch on the event that you're sick. And you're like, he's asking you all these questions about like, hey, how do you pick the champs? What do you do? What do you do? And he's suggesting all of these like really normal things that would make sense, like statistics, and you're laughing them off.
Right.
You're like, what? No, that's. You're like, no, that's all highly unreliable. I'm not I'm not a Black Clover fan. I need a little bit more than that to like, give me some. I need to be able to see further than just what's directly in front of me.
Right.
I'm not just the average Redditor. I need more.
Sure.
And so you reveal your secret, which is the prophet, which remained, God bless. Originally, it was a sheep, but that one then was a goat, and then it became a chicken. Large animals hard. When you write things, the privilege of writing is that you can imagine any animal you want there, and then a producer can say to you, "We can't get a goat, dude. What the hell?
No,
are
you couldn't have a goat. You couldn't have a sheep.
You can't have a mini horse. Also not an option. Weird. So the next most hilarious animal we could get our hands on was a chicken.
Yeah. So I was talking. Okay. So basically, Patrick was our producer. Patrick's a pretty new producer. You probably heard us mention like Margot and Dennis before, maybe even Phil, because Phil produces a lot of, he's producing this. But Patrick, pretty new producer. And so he came to me with a pitch. The first thing I said was, I ain't doing a sheep. There are too many people. They'll make too many jokes. That ain't happening.
Welsh life.
So I'm fine, but like, let's, I'm still on PT. So after MSI ended, I took 2 weeks off, basically. So the last 2 weeks, I've not really looked at the game, nor have I looked at work. I have like 50 emails in my inbox that I saw this morning. I was like, I'll check those later.
Surprise, time for Euphoria. Angel's sick. Wild card,
so,
baby.
I showed up, I woke up this morning and I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm here. And
we love you for it.
And I showed up on set. And I'd like read the script. I told Patrick I didn't like it, but we'll figure it out later. And then I got there on the day. And the first thing I thought of was like, so it needs to make sense as to why Odomomne is here. That was the first thing that came to mind. And then the next thing we needed to figure out was like, okay, well, once we figured out why Odomomne is here, what makes sense for my character? Because the thing, Drakos knows this very well. Like, what you guys see on camera, it's actually not. Well, it kind of is me, but it isn't me because I hate.
It's exaggerated.
Yeah, I hate playing myself. I always feel like I have to play a character, right?
Shit.
I have to play someone. So when for those that know me, like I like to make like very egotistical jokes, right?
That's true.
I make a lot of them.
Sometimes the line is blurred on what is or isn't a joke anymore. Yes.
But that was kind of the persona that I wanted with Odo, which was that like I am the beacon of all content and that I can do no wrong. And that Odo was so impressed with me that he wanted to be my protege. And so that was the universe that I then created. And obviously Odo's the perfect character for that because he's the exact opposite of that, because Odo is impressed by absolutely nothing. And so when he showed up on the shoot, we said, we just need you to be yourself. And he said, thank you. I am so grateful for this because I love just being myself. And we're like, great. So you just be yourself. So I'm just going to say things to you and we just want you to do your normal reaction. Okay. And he's like, sure. So I then read the script to him and his lines like, that's horrifying. That was him. That was all him. That was just Odo Amne just being himself. And like, we definitely did a couple takes, but like all those lines were just Odo Amne just reacting to what so he wasn't acting there. Everyone's like, wow, Odo's such a good actor. He's like, you just being himself, which is
that's typecasting. Odo Amne is the Jack Black of esports casting.
Yeah. And then, so the chicken wasn't my idea, but yeah, I just kind of like, as you rightly said, I was given a scene where it was just like, just kind of put yourself in it. And the things that I came up with was, it needs to make sense for who I am. It needs to make sense for Odo Amne. I think it came out well. I liked it.
I liked it.
I like Jaws as well.
We did good.
I absolutely love that Cadril showed up for a 2-second scene.
Yeah.
I was like, why is Cadril called? When does Cadril show up? And then he was just there. I was just like, why?
My boy's getting paid. 2-second appearance. No, the best part of that, they cut a bunch of the stuff out because kind of similar to you, we just had the sandbox where there's the middle where I'm just supposed to do weird stuff at Blippo. But they cut out the clip where I just barked at him at a dog, and then he barked back at me. And I'm hoping I can get that clip someday. So that's the final note for this section, but someday you will get the clip of me and Whippo barking at each other back and forth. I don't know when or how I will receive that clip, Patrick. But
as a small note, that is also a great thing. So, you know, they do media days.
Yeah.
I found out from Reckless's stream that what they also make the players do is dance. And all of the players do this, literally all of them. Some of them decline, but the Ollie will ask all of them to dance. He will put some music on and they will dance in front of the green screen. And so he sent me the link of Reckless dancing. So I have that, and we've never used it on broadcast, but I do have Reckless dancing. We have used Caps and Yankos dancing on broadcast before, but apparently we have footage of almost all of the pro players dancing. So there's all this footage.
All I'm saying is you sold Cadril out for whatever Agurin paid you already.
Yeah.
Chat, fundraise.
What do you want?
We need that footage out in the wild.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, you'll have to talk to the media guys, the guys that make all of our hype videos every week. They're the guys that have the secret footage. But there's all kinds of secret footage behind the scenes that...
It's actually a slippery slope because they do also record everything that we say behind the stage. It's true.
Everything.
Maybe risky. Maybe we don't want to start the trend.
I mean...
Anyway... If you want
I'll say on this podcast what I say.
Yeah.
Oh, so who we starting with?
That's a great question. All right, so let's jump into the summer season roster rundown thing. That was just a little behind the scenes on the content. Vidya and I both really love making that content. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching it. Shout out to all the publishing producers that we work with this time around. It was Patrick, his first set of these cast rads, did a great job. But we are now going to run through all 10 rosters. We're doing this because this has been just an absolutely insane offseason. Normally, we wouldn't do this kind of thing in summer because usually there's like 1, maybe 2 changes. Sven and Mithy went from Origin to G2 once. That was like the craziest offseason. Do you remember those
stats? I remember a stats team telling us ages ago where they were like, we had one season where we went from spring to summer and there were like so many roster changes, but it was weird. But it wasn't even that many. But it was so weird because of how rare it actually was.
I mean, it's super, and I don't know the exact numbers, but even just thinking back, like more often than not, like you think back to like the Misfits World runs, like Maxlore came in for Cacao. That was like the only significant change. You had like Mickey in the Splice lineup in like 2017. That was a significant change. 2016. That was 2016. Yeah, but like more often than not, it's like 1, maybe 2 changes.
Yeah, normally it's not very common because people like commit. Well, it's like 2-year contracts that people are normally on.
Yeah.
And so usually at the very least they run with a roster for the year, maybe making 1 or 2 changes based on like subs or like maybe a player really doesn't fit into a team. And normally it's also the bottom half teams that make changes.
Yeah, the top half teams who are winning like
They usually don't change it. Like, I mean, we haven't seen any changes for Rogue, haven't seen any changes for Mad, G2. They obviously haven't made. They brought in Nelson, which is going to be interesting, actually. Cool. But we'll talk a little bit about it later. But yeah, to see the Fnatic changes was surprising.
And we're going to save the best for last, because Fnatic and Vitality are the juicy ones. And people, if you want to skip ahead, I respect it, but we're going to go through everything, because there's a ton of changes, not just the Fnatic ones. But we'll go through every roster just to give everyone their time in the spotlight. We will keep it brief, though, on the rosters that are not as, well, it's just not as exciting, you know, not as crazy. And we'll start with Mad Lions. And again, Mad Lions, fantastic MSI performance. Unsurprisingly, after that, have decided to keep the same roster. Thank you. There's a lion picture in the background, a glad lion picture, if you're in podcast land, that is now supporting our talking points here. But Armut, Elyoya, Humanoid, Karzi, Kaiser. This is the roster. They went to MSI. Yay. First in playoffs, third regular season. I think there's not really a lot to cover here. I think this is a team that we expect to continue to be contesting the top. But I do think it's important to call out, and I don't know what your read on this, Vedi, is that I don't think, unlike the G2s of past, I don't think that you instantly assume that Mad Lions are winning everything right off the bat in the same way that we kind of gave that benefit of the doubt to G2 2019 or Fnatic 2018. Yep. This feels like a team. This is still going to be a really tight regular season race, and we still expect really close best of fives from this team when we feel like inevitably do make it to playoffs.
So what was interesting was I spoke to Mac a lot during MSI, getting his input on like meta, how the team was doing, just general insight. And he never spoke to me about this, but Armut did speak about it, which was the kind of like burnout that he seemed to be experiencing, which is something that I think a lot of us take for granted, because G2 and Fnatic have been like our representatives for so long. They have so much experience, and something that we've heard like those players talk about a lot in the past was, I mean, even after 2019 Worlds, Grabs coming into 2020 was talking about how like they want to take spring split really easily. They don't want to like over prep. They were scrimming like 2 days a week or something. Whereas Mad Lions was like from the beginning, how the growth that they made within the split to then win the split to then immediately into MSI, where you're then plunged against the best teams in the world. It's a lot. So in terms of expectations, I think that they met those expectations. The fact that they took down 1 to 5 games, I think was impressive. Because when we watched back that game, we could see that they were pushed to their absolute limit in their wins, and then they got stomped in their losses. So I think that the stronger team definitely won, and draft was a huge factor in what ultimately gave Mad Lions an ability to fight back. But I think that they kind of like, their rate of growth is already so fast that I don't think that they could just keep up with that growth, right? And so I hope that coming back now into summer, I mean, apparently I saw Karzi tweeting that they start scrims today, I think, or they started scrims yesterday.
Yeah, which is
so like
normal, I think. Well, not usually.
A lot of scrims already started scrimming like 2 weeks ago,
3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that they're rested and like they don't burn themselves out at the beginning of summer. Of course, they don't want to be losing a lot at the beginning of summer because these early wins really do matter.
Yeah.
But I hope that they like learned a lot from that, because they come to appreciate a little bit more that long span of playing. We talk about a lot how like the year is a very long year. But I think that Elyoya is still a player definitely worth watching. Humanoid and Karzi had a great tournament. Kaiser had his up and down performance. I know Armut got like a decent amount of criticism. And for me, one of the big things for him and for Mad Lions in general this draft, I think that he seems to mainly play carries. And maybe that is just the meta right now with Lee Sin, Jace being the go-to. But I want to see a little bit more diversification in what Mad Lions are actually capable of. What can they do? Because I think that's ultimately why they lost to Damwon. Damwon had more tools in their kit. Showmaker could literally play any mid laner that he wanted to. And make it work.
That's true. That was a little tough sometimes.
And I think that when we saw G2 succeed in the past, they had very diverse, very open-ended drafts where they could kind of play through anyone and through anything. And I definitely think Mad Lions have the potential to do that. It's not just about getting those deeper champion pools, constantly adapting and evolving with the meta. And I think that they're definitely an exciting team to watch, especially because of how talented Elyoya is and what he can do. And I think that that growth, that trajectory, I'm curious as to how far they'll keep going with the upward trend that they've already been on.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say that one thing for fan expectations is that we've seen pretty consistently from G2, who's been a representative for the last few years. There's a trend that these first few weeks, Mad Lions might struggle to adapt, might struggle to get back into it. They've had less practice time. They might not hit the ground running, and I think that Mad Lions fans should know that that's okay.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this is still a team that has really high expectations. I mean, right now you're talking about what they need to do to beat Damwon the next time around, which is already such a big credit, and they're not playing Damwon. So I think that, again, if you're a fan at looking at Mad Lions, no surprise to you probably, but Mad Lions is a team that we expect great things from, and a lot of their split is going to be decided, I think, about how the competition looks around them, and if they can keep up, as you said, some of that rate of growth. The next team I want to talk about is a team that has had some roster changes, and to me, some very surprising roster changes. Schalke No Fear, Broken Blade, Kire, Nuclear Int, Neon, Limit, Kire, and Nuclear Int, 2 new players, Gilius gone, Abadage gone, Abadage, of course. Shout out to him. He's an NA with 100 Thieves. Good on him. Want nothing for the best from him. But for Schalke, I don't know about you, but I feel like this is, and again, don't know a ton about Nuclear Int, want to see him perform well, but Abadage was a known quantity and was a pretty solid mid laner. He had a pretty mediocre start to his career, admittedly, but everyone's going to remember the Faker Dogge performance, and I think that when I was at the Schalke house and I was talking to Schalke, Dylan had nothing but great things to say about Abadage and his individual performance. This is a guy who was getting better and better, and it feels like I can understand if Schalke wanted to, to sell a player or if Abadage wanted to go, but this does not feel like, until proven otherwise, this does not look like a buff coming in for Schalke.
Yeah, I don't think that this is necessarily a huge upgrade. Abadage was very good, and I think that when we look at his most recent split in particular, he proved that he is definitely a top mid laner in Europe and he can compete, and he's made some pretty significant growth. I didn't actually watch his game closely in North America. I think they're like 1-1 or something right now.
Yeah. I watched the Viego games to see what the hell Viego does. Yeah. Spoiler, it's not very exciting until he does the one thing that he does, and then it's exciting, but then it's back to being boring. But yeah, I haven't kept up that much with NA.
But the thing about Abadage was that he had grown in the same way that I think Nemesis and Larson and Humanoid did, which was like the next generation of mids, right? Because I think he actually came in alongside Humanoid and Nemesis, from what I recall, and then Larson came in a little bit after both of them, all three of them. But in any case, I think that Abadage was a large part of what made that team super strong, and he was like a clutch factor, a playmaker, and really important to the team. Nuclear Int is pretty fresh. He's been playing since 2019, end of 2019 still, and he's been on a couple different teams. And while they did qualify for EU Masters, they didn't have the strongest performance. Fortunately, I haven't done as much prep as I would have liked to yet.
Yeah, we did kind of call you in last minute, didn't we? Thank you.
But Nuclear Int, from what I remember from Masters, because I did watch that a lot, was not super standout. And that doesn't necessarily mean a lot, because EU Masters has a lot of factors going into it. So I'm not going to judge my opinion of him purely because of that. But it's hard for me to believe that a rookie on the LEC is going to match the same level of experience that Abadage has. And I don't think it's fair to also put that responsibility on him.
Oh, I agree.
So I'm not saying that he can't live up to what Abadage eventually became, but simply as a result of him being new, I think that, it seems to me like Schalke in the offseason wasn't super invested on trying to make the strongest possible roster, right? I feel like that they made small adjustments to give them a solid roster for Summer Split.
Yeah.
And I think that they got Nuclear Int from their Masters team, and they brought in Kire. I'm actually not sure where they got Kire from, because was he also on Schalke as well? No, he wasn't. He was on Games Origin beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, Kire has to do with a lot of history, right? He's a guy.
Yeah, a lot of history.
Played at MSI, played for the Misfits lineup, Kire has been all over the scene. He's always been solid. I think he's never been one of the big standouts. He's had a few games and a few moments across his career on LEC main stage where he's really, or international stage where he's really popped off and he's really had those moments. But he's never been a consistent name on, and I think that it's kind of like up in the air how good he's going to be, because Gilius was obviously always kind of a controversial figure. He was always, it felt like he was either popping off or he was doing very little, as was the case in a lot of his Nidalee games, for example. But obviously, Tank Hecarim favored him a lot. So I think when we look at this roster, just to kind of wrap this up so we don't spend too long on Schalke here, I don't think it's reasonable to expect more from this roster than you did from the previous roster coming into the split. I would say that, unless proven otherwise, I assume that they're placing lower than the previous, or that this will be a weaker roster than the previous Schalke.
That would be my expectation. Yeah. They finished 4th last split. I would be surprised if they finished 4th again.
Yeah. And that was a close finish. I think making playoffs even, I think, will be difficult.
Oh,
I think the thing is that I see Abadage, I see Gilius as two people who were working on this team for a while. And I know there's mixed opinions again, but I think that
so the way I look at it is the teams that qualified outside of the big four in Fnatic, G2, Mad Rogue was Schalke and SK. And originally, I remember at playoffs, we were like, Schalke SK was 5-6.
Yep.
But I think you would knock SK out and maybe put Vitality in if you want, just arbitrarily, right? And so I think that Schalke could still make playoffs with this roster, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think a lot will depend on how the other teams rise up around them. Because I'm looking at Misfits.
Sure.
And again, I talk to Deficio all the time, so maybe I'm just talking to Deficio too much.
Yeah, I think you are.
He likes. I think he sneaks in code words when we exercise together, just like hear it. Oh yeah, great set, bro. Like VTO. Oh, you're doing good pump there, buddy. But this was a team that was getting better once they figured out that playing through VTO was the right strategy. This was a team that was stepping up, and so when we look at Misfits, it's like Misfits are another team on this list, and again, same roster: Hirit, Razork, VTO, Kabe, Vander. This is a lineup that I think could contest that spot. And I do remember back to how insanely close 4th, 5th, 6th was, because it was that giant messy tiebreaker where Schalke won the tiebreaker in the end with a 9-9 scoreline. But that entire split was like, that entire end of that season was tenuous. You remember it was like really just an absolute mess, those last two, which by the way, I love. I really hope we get more of that. But that entire final split was a bit of a mess. So I think last note on Schalke, I think you're totally right. I think it's fair to put Schalke in playoffs, but I think that when we look at a team like Misfits and we start talking about Misfits, I think Misfits are a team that I expect a little bit more from, not because I think that their players have like undergone some great big character change over the offseason or anything like that. I just think that they were getting better towards the end of the split and they've kept a roster, which is weirdly rare again in the spring to summer. It is a couple top teams and Misfits and everyone else is just changing everything.
Sure. So Misfits. 2019 spring, 8th. 2019 summer, 9th.
Yes.
2020 spring, they ended 5th. They got knocked out first round of playoffs, so 6th.
Bam.
And then summer, they went 8th.
Bam.
So over the in 2019, 2020, they've gone from decent to worse.
True.
Right? That has just been their trajectory, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that due to that, obviously a number of factors are at play, but their track record is not that good.
No, it's very bad. It's safe to say Misfits have an absolutely trash track record.
And the one time where it got better, where they went from 7th to 4th, that was the roster with Alfari, Hanshammer, and Mickey on it.
That was a good roster.
So it's one of those things where I will no longer ever believe in Misfits. I think that from an organization standpoint, something is going wrong internally. And I'm really happy that they are keeping this roster because I think that that's really important. But I think that something is going on there.
I mean,
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, you don't need to give more context. Like, I feel you. Like, you only need to get burned so many times before you stop believing. And to be clear, I think what you're trying to say, you're not putting it on the players. It's not these 5 players' fault that you don't believe in Misfits. It's Misfits' fault that you don't believe in Misfits. They just keep losing.
Because it's one of those things where, like, you can partly put it on the players because, again, they're the ones that show up on the Rift, right? And they're the ones that have to play, right?
But this roster, you're not blaming this roster for 2019, 2018.
No, I'm not. Because, like, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter what iteration of Misfits there is. It seems that this trend seems to occur, right? Which to me suggests that there's something internal rather than regardless of what roster they have, something just seems to be going on, right?
Wrong.
And I don't know what that is, and I'm not going to speculate either because I think that's unfair. But that's why it's hard for me to just sit there and blindly have faith in Misfits. Because sure, they had an okay spring. Okay is the kindest word, because they finished 8-10 towards the end of the split. They were on an upwards trajectory.
Yep.
VTO, I think, kind of solved a little bit his champion pool issues, which was that he could only play Zoe at the start. When he didn't get Zoe, he didn't look as good.
True.
His Syndra and his Victor looked meh. But once he started finding more champions towards the end of the split, he definitely started to look a lot more confident. And they were if they'd won one more game, they could have been in contention.
They could have.
But
I mean, they were in 7th, and again, the team talked about it, right? They figured out more that they just kind of have to. I don't know if they have to, but that playing through VTO is what works for them. Razork spending a lot more time mid lane, a lot less time.
And I thought like Hirit, he had a lot of promising showings, and I was kind of up on him, and then he didn't, and then he did, and then he didn't, and so I'm like, what am I supposed to think? So my opinion of Misfits is that, like, sure, they have good players. I've seen the potential of their players, but I don't know if I can necessarily trust their coaching staff to help develop these players just yet.
And it's also, it's new coaching staff. I believe Enetron stepped away and they have someone else. They announced their coaching staff, but it was a giant, like there's like an 8-person Twitter graphic and included everyone.
Right.
So outside of Hiva and I think Candy Floss, great name. That name sticks with me. I don't know you, but your name stuck with me. Candy Floss and Hiva, a lot of people in that staff. So there are changes behind the scenes too. So I think what I'll say is I agree. If you're skeptical of Misfits, I think everyone has a right to be skeptical of Misfits. Sure. I think it's fair to say they have high ceilings, but the I believe it when I'll see it mentality holds true for a lot of our teams that don't regularly make it into playoffs. Our next team, however, is not one of those teams. It's G2 Esports, Wonder, Yankos, Caps, Reckless, Mickey X. You know them.
I mean, the failures. That's who you are.
The absolute failure. You want to talk about a team that you can't put your faith in?
I mean, the benchmark shifts, right? What did you just knock over?
No, I threw my phone down in rage.
Frustration. That was all. You were representing all G2 fans right there. Third place.
Imagine being sad about third place when like the Astralis fans are like, please, just a crumb.
Yeah. So why do you want to start with G2?
I mean, I think we just talk about kind of wrapping it up, what we expect. We actually, so the thing to know about us is that because G2 go to international events, the teams we usually know the best are the teams internationally, because that's when we can shamelessly ask teams what is getting played in scrims. In the regular season, we try to keep it pretty chill because we don't want anyone to accidentally give away any information that they don't want to go to. But in Worlds, the EU teams, we're best friends. They tell us what the meta is. We find out half the time they're wrong and they're running it down. But that's that good stuff. So I think we both know this team pretty well. But what's your read? Is this G2 rising? Are they going to be right back on top, or are you sweating for G2?
So I think we should start by talking about the issues that they faced in spring.
Sure.
So the first one was this concept of leadership. We heard them talking about it in a couple of interviews, which was that like Yankos has kind of had to step up because what Perks was a large voice, which should come as a surprise to no one, because when we think about it, right, all those players talk, but when I sit there and I like maybe it's harder for fans. I actually just know a lot of the G2 players very well.
Yeah.
And like when I sit there and think of Caps, very talented player, but he's not a leader.
He's not just chill. He's just very relaxed.
Right? Yankos, very vocal, but actually someone that in my history has never been someone that like makes a lot of the decisions. He just communicates a lot, right? Wonder is just kind of in an island doing his own thing, chilling, right? Mickey, never been the most vocal player ever. And Reckless kind of had the responsibility of being a leader, but coming on G2, that was not his expectation, right?
And he explicitly said, because we've talked to Reckless a lot, right? Obviously a very historic player, but he specifically said in the past that people have tried to put him in that role before, and he has tried to take it on, but ultimately he feels like he plays worse. He feels like it isn't good for him to take that role. So I think you can't really, maybe people did expect that role from Reckless. He's a veteran. People naturally associate those two things together. But I think that Reckless has been vocal that that's not the position that he likes to be in.
Right. So when you don't have a leader, I think that, I mean, like Vitality does. I think that it can be difficult to help find an identity. And what they relied on a lot during the regular season was their individually skilled players. But it was fascinating because I spoke to some coaches and teams and they were like, you can beat G2 if you remove some of the agency. So if you force them to play a comp that is like standard, quote unquote, they're actually going to struggle more than they are with the crazier comps that give all of their individuals a huge amount of agency, because the agency is actually kind of what overshadows the whole leadership aspect, right? Mm-hmm. But as you get closer and closer to playoffs and the meta is more refined and defined, that role and that identity of a team is actually more and more important. And I think that was something that they struggled to find. So I think that that's something that they've been working on primarily moving into summer, and hopefully Yankos now feels a little bit more comfortable in that role and taking on the responsibility. If it even is him, I don't know what G2 has come on with saying, and maybe they actually think this isn't as much of an issue as I believe it was.
Yeah.
But the other big thing was comfort. Now, Reckless spoke about this on his stream, where he basically said that he wanted to play champions that he felt that he was really comfortable on and that he had practiced a lot. And he was actually one of the big advocates for the Karma. He was the one proposing and suggesting it because he believed it strong. And he had, I mean, they all talked about it. Their read on the meta ended up not being quite as accurate or as strong as they thought it was. But then he didn't necessarily have fallback champions because he wasn't as comfortable on them. So in the off season, I don't know if anyone saw Reckless' streams, but he was just perma-spamming duo Q with Mickey in the Diamond 1, the thing that you do with the Master Tier.
Yeah, you dodge to stay in Diamond 1, which is questionable. But
they were primarily wanted to play against the teams that were here too. So he loved playing against like the Dom ones and the RNGs and the PSGs and everyone basically that was here in the US solo queue. But he didn't decide anything. Mickey picked their bot lanes for everything, right? They played Camille's support. They played Elise support, Galio support. They played everything. And all Reckless did was say, what AD carry works with this? Mickey would give him a list and then he would just pick one. And so they played absolutely every bot lane. And he was sitting there trying to explain that he's doing this because he's good enough to play all these champions because he's played them all before, but he just needs the confidence to be able to just then bring them out to whenever the need comes to be, right? And it was crazy because you know that I've actually been spoken about this Kalista priority for him when he played for Fnatic ages ago. Like, they don't play Kalista. Kalista was really big in the meta. He refuses to play it.
Never saw Reckless Kalista. Absolutely not.
And then I saw 3 games in a row of him and Mickey just playing Kalista Thresh, Kalista something else. They played the Kalista Galio, I think they also did. And they also did other crazy stuff. But like, it seems that he has identified what he considers a problem. And he wants to fix. And he's been working really closely with Mickey to do that. And he hasn't been streaming much, so I don't know what the status of that is, because I got all of that information just from watching his stream. Which, by the way, I would recommend. He is really informative, and he's a genuine joy to watch when it comes to that. But I would say that I wouldn't be worried. Oh, the other thing...
Last note.
Kadril said this as well, which was that Caps has only been grinding solo. He hasn't streamed at all. He streamed once last week, but all of MSI and he has just been perma grinding. That man has been, I think he was super frustrated after the loss, and I don't think he likes losing. So I think that like individual ability is something that I would probably like, I'm really excited to watch for these players coming back. But also like, what will their drafts look like now? Is kind of what I'm excited to be, because like maybe I'm talking out my backside and maybe none of that was an issue. Again, a lot of this is just me kind of gathering from
putting the pieces together from the information that's publicly available.
And it seems to me that they're motivated, they're hungry, they're really driven to win, and I think that is when G2 is at their scariest, right? That's when they've always been scary.
And I agree, and I think that like all the players grinding, I think you have to be optimistic. I think Reckless was very outspoken when he joined this G2 roster about how he wanted to be the guy that could like to fit into this atmosphere, to play everything. It's sad that didn't work, or that he felt like it didn't work in playoffs. But I think the thing about G2 is that G2 aren't automatically the clear favorites to win everything. I think they're now in that list with Mad and Rogue and G2, which I think you just put as the 3 teams that, like, if you wanted to take bets on who was going to win the split, you'd put one of those 3 names on your list. Sure. Whatever your reasons are probably fine. But optimism for G2, looking at improvement with a meta that seems to have a lot of very powerful solo lane champions and flex picks. Maybe we see a stronger G2, but let's shift our attention to, you're not Kadril, which is great because you don't have any baggage with this next team. Let's talk about,
I was on the first XL roster, right?
You have so much baggage. Everyone has baggage with Excel. Why does everyone have baggage with Excel?
If you're British, you've been associated with Excel in some capacity.
Wow, okay. Yeah, well, there's a great follow-up joke here I'm not going to make. Excel Esports, anyway, their roster. Let's go through, because this is a weird one.
Yeah.
This is a weird one. So we've got Cries Dan, yes, you know. Patrick's still 80 carry, but now we've got NukeDuck in the mid lane, and we've got Denick, who was acquired from Misfits as their support. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna give you my initial feelings, and you just tell me.
Sure.
You bounce it. You go off that. So there's a lot of weird energy in this roster.
Weird energy? Okay.
Weird energy is how I describe it. So one, NukeDuck. Now, a lot of fans are immediately, I think, going to be like, ooh, NukeDuck. But I'm like, NukeDuck always had a solid ceiling. He really struggled to hit it on Origin. But he's a player that has historically been very good. And even when he was not fantastic on stage, he's a player that always, when talking to other players about scrims and how this guy performed, he was always he's like your mid laner's favorite mid laner. Sure. That's how I would describe it. Probably not favorite, but like on your favorite mid laner's top 3, top 4 list domestically, right? Like NukeDuck was always on that short list. So I'm inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that's probably unfair based on his historic results. But this whole offseason, there's a bunch of drama here associated with this whole Excel thing. I'm not going to get into it, but you guys can Google it if you want to. But this whole offseason for Excel has been kind of crazy. The Denick acquiring Denick was very good, but the whole Nuke Duck Checkolab thing got a little weird. But I look at this roster and I go, this is just weird, because Denick isn't a player that like historically has always made playoffs. Torre has had some pretty solid results. You know, you can tell me that like, okay, Denick's going to be an upgrade for the team environment. I can believe you, but I don't know what Excel are trying to do here, I guess is what I don't understand. Is this like, we need to make playoffs at all costs, so we're betting super hard on Nuke Duck and Denick, who both had kind of underwhelming previous splits? Because it's not investing in young talent. And Kieran was very vocal publicly about how he felt like that BT Excel roster, which is great in EU Masters, by the way, making it all the way to finals. He's like, we believe in these guys. But then, like, why aren't those guys getting
didn't
promoted?
you see the announcement? Something came out recently that said that they were offered, but they declined.
Oh.
Yep. It's not Macnoon, but he has a very similar... Marcoon, yes, Marcoon. Marcoon and their support, who I've forgotten the name of as well, but both of them were offered. And apparently, this is a rumor, okay? This is a rumor that I read, but it was on Reddit yesterday or the day before. But there was a rumor that said that they were offered spots in the starting roster, and they both declined.
Shit. Okay, that's not a good look. I don't know how to follow up on that. I don't want to dwell on that because that's not a good look if that's true. But again, it's a rumor. But
I mean, it could be all kinds of things. So, like, I don't know how much time you want to spend on this.
Let's cut through because I don't want to spend any time speculating. I don't want to spend any time.
Okay.
Just tell me, what's your read on what this roster is supposed to achieve, and do you think that they will get there? Is this roster built to make playoffs? Are they built to survive a split? Is this the future of Excel? Like, when you look at this roster, what is a reasonable expectation for this roster?
So I'm going to preface what I say with I'm not a pro player, okay?
That's true.
And I haven't been, right? I was amateur, but as I said, I played for Excel back in the UK Premiership.
True.
So that was a long time
Intimate
ago.
knowledge of how Excel works as an organization.
But if I was to look at Excel, I think that I, as a pro, would be hesitant based on their history, right? And I think that it's one of those things where Excel probably wanted to make moves that would give them the best chance of success, and maybe there weren't that many players that were interested. Or Young Buck had a plan. And I did listen to his interview with Dom, where he actually gave a lot of really good insight into his logic, right?
Yeah.
And you can decide for yourself if you want to agree with his logic. But his logic was that he believes that Dan still offers a lot of value to the team. I believe he talked about how like the meta shifted away from what he wanted Dan to do. And that kind of like really hurt him. But hopefully with the jungle changes now back to being a little bit more aggressive. We've seen over in NA, Xin Zhao and Lee are now being played and stuff. So maybe we get to see a little bit more of an aggressive Dan, which is kind of like, I think, what Young Buck wanted from him. And Nuke Duck, he really valued the experience and insight that he gave, because Nuke Duck is very good at sharing insight and knowledge with his team.
Yeah.
The thing that I will say is that I think that from a fan perspective, and I get it, is that Nuke Duck for a long time has been praised. It doesn't have any results. I don't know if you saw this Chovy conversation recently, but there was this thread on Reddit where Apto was saying that like he thinks
Chovy's
is
the GOAT.
The GOAT. He's uncontested. He's just like the greatest mid laner in the world right now.
LS just rolling around.
Yeah, but I mean, we've all seen it, right?
Yeah,
like Chovy's insane.
good.
Chovy is insanely talented, but results matter.
Sure.
Results are always going to matter. It's like, yeah, you're good, but Faker was good and he won. You're good and you haven't, right? So sucks to suck, but I'm sorry. Like Faker was on a bunch of different rosters, yet he kept winning, right?
Yeah, and there's an importance in, there's also always going to be an amount, like, can you get on the right roster at the right time?
Sure. Like there's a bunch of variables, and I get that.
But ultimately, winning is what matters.
And my point is that I'm not trying to like flame Chovy here, because I am a big Chovy stan. I think he's super talented, but I think Nuke Duck has kind of like that thing where we as casters have promoted him, right? And
you're the duck.
Yeah, right. And he's also received a lot of praise from pros, right?
Yep.
And you talked about it, right?
Yeah, Perks always used to talk Nuke Duck up about how good he was in lane.
And it's one of those things where like Nuke Duck has this long history of people giving him credit. And I quickly looked it up. His first team, I don't know how valid this team was, but his first team was back in 2011, 3D Max. Back in December of 2011, right? And then remember that was it 2013? Yeah, 2013 Lemon Dogs, he made it to Worlds. right? And then he played Faker, the famous Swain. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember that.
But he used Swain as a counterpick to Ari, which didn't work. But Nukeduck, if he's still playing in November, he will have been playing pro for 10 years, right? So like his reputation internally, like just goes to show how respected he is as a pro player and how talented he actually is. But his success is very limited. I don't think he's ever won a split, ever.
Yeah,
So,
I think,
and it's one of those things where it's kind of like, it depends on what side of the coin you want to fall on, where it's like, how much longer can you give him credit for? Because the truth is, he hasn't won anything in those 10 years. He's had like solid results, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but I think like the first Origin split was good, and then it kind of just it went to hell in a handbasket very quickly, and then he obviously stepped away for medical reasons in the previous one, or was ultimately like replaced by Magic Felix. But I guess the only thing I really want to know about Excel, because I think people are going to know about Nukeduck, right? People are either they're gonna hate him, or they're gonna be like, oh, maybe it's finally time for Year of the Duck. One or two of those people I hope exist, because we said Year of the Duck enough times in our life that I hope that those people exist. But I think the ultimate thing, Vidi, that I really want to know is like, in my eyes, making playoffs is what matters to Excel, right? Just making playoffs. Is this the roster that can make playoffs?
I mean, just on talent alone, yeah, it has the ability to make playoffs. I think the meta will also shift things. We saw Cries shifting away from just only being able to play carries to tanks. And I think the Nukeduck has a deep enough champion pool that they should be a lot more flexible in draft than they were with Shekelad. So I think on paper, sure, this roster could make playoffs, but I've said the same thing about every roster that they've had. So
I think they're doomed. I think the same thing that you have about Misfits, where you just don't believe in Misfits. I can't believe in Excel.
I was personally a big Torre hater. I think that he made his AD carries worse. I think that he made Kobe worse, and I think that he made Patrick worse too. I don't like Torre had his moments. Don't get me wrong, but I was someone that I think that he held back many of his AD carries.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Patrick goated. Patrick, great ADC for sure.
And I don't know if necessarily Denick will be an upgrade to that. Like, I can't promise, because all I know is Denick is more aggressive than I think Torre was. But
I respect your optimism, because I'm not
Hang on,
optimistic.
I didn't say they would. I said that this roster could.
Okay,
this roster has the ability to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't count. Could is great. I mean, like 45 players could drop dead, and like we could suddenly have just a default crowned best team.
I mean, I don't know who you want to talk about, but I can tell you right now, like Astralis, I don't really believe in. Right? I don't really believe in SK.
All right, let's move on then, because I think.
And Misfits, I don't believe in. So then it's like Schalke, XL, Vitality.
XL make it by default.
Yeah, that's yeah. So it's kind of like, who do you have less faith in, Schalke or XL?
God, that's
you know
a negative spin.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is our top side of the league is really stacked.
It's true. It's true. Who sucks the least?
It's kind of, but that's also kind of like sixth place playoffs. That's kind of how it's always been. You know what I mean? Because a lot of our bottom side teams, one of their biggest issues has always been consistency, and your ability to beat the other teams around you is what ultimately allows you to qualify for playoffs. Yeah. So unfortunately, that's kind of the world that they live in, unless that they suddenly explode and find a meta that fits them perfectly, and then they find a load of consistency. It's hard for me to put them in the bucket of the top 5. Yeah. So they're always going to be that who takes the scraps kind of team, unfortunately.
Then that's rough. All right, let's hit the other who takes the scraps team real quick in Astralis.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Astralis. You didn't. You got 9th. You changed nothing.
Well, Magic Felix is now the mainstay, right?
Is now the mainstay, and he did have his moments.
He has moments.
Which is good. It's important to note they had more time to practice, but Astralis, this team, I think does not make playoffs. I think that they can prove me wrong, absolutely. And again, I think that there were great moments from individual players on the team. White Knight has a fantastic moment. Magic Felix, Zanzara was an amazing personality and did have some really fantastic games. But like, I don't know. To me, all these other teams are changing, and I think that is the best news for Astralis is all of the other teams that are around them changing their roster. I think that volatility is going to be maybe what gives Astralis a shot, but I think keeping all of your players on a 9th place roster and being like, this is the one, when they had such miserable performances at the start of the split, to me is a little bit sus, but maybe there's something there that I'm not seeing. What's your read on expectations for Astralis?
Well, I remember AOD talking in an interview about how he thought that the roster had made like significant progress throughout the split.
Sure.
And towards the end, he felt like that they were getting a lot better. And I think we commented on that. We saw them have some pretty solid performances. Unfortunately, again, I haven't done enough prep yet before week 1, but I can't remember who they beat. I just remember that they started beating the better teams and they started having more competitive games. And Zanzara being a fan favorite also helped people like watch their games a little bit more. But
they did beat Mad. They did beat SK,
Right.
They beat Schalke, and they beat XL.
Right.
And Vitality twice.
So that was the thing. They were kind of like on that upwards trajectory, I feel. But the problem is that it's hard for me to like pound for pound. I just don't think they stack up against many of the other teams that exist in our league.
I'm inclined to agree.
And I remember Promiscu had some like really weak performances. I remember Jeskla, like he had some high moments, but like that's the problem. You're kind of like you're reaching. It's kind of what you're like. I don't want to just flame this team. It's kind of the logic, right? Like as a caster, we don't want to put these teams in the dirt because like our job is to help elevate these players, right?
Yeah,
and we want to help give them a platform where we can showcase their strengths. But unfortunately, in competition, not everyone gets to win. And when it comes to Astralis, unfortunately, they just don't have the roster that I think individually can quite match many of the other players. I think that there are some champ pool issues that you can also discuss. Like it's great that Zanzara has Skarner. And I mean, I'm being a little hyperbolic there because obviously you can play more than just Skarner, right?
But I know what you mean.
But it was one of the like, he had champions. Like I remember, what was the narrative? He had those champions that if he had that champion, he did not lose. He had like a 100% win rate, but I can't remember what the champion was. I think it was Hecarim.
It's Hecarim.
Yeah.
Hecarim.
So like, there are those champions, like, yeah, he wants that same record with as many champions as possible, ideally.
I agree. I think you summarize it nicely where it's like, you if you want to believe in this team, you're cherry picking the best moments, but then when you look at what percentage of their games were those best moments, it's not enough, right? You need it to be like, if it's 50-50, you can be like, I believe in this team. But when it's like 10-90, 20-80, even 30-70, you're like, you can't realistically put a ton of faith. And again, we could be wrong. League of Legends is a game with a million friggin' factors, even before you get into just how good are these players. But I think Astralis is on the bottom end. And they opted not to change anything. We'll see. Maybe they surprise us. Rogue, on the other hand, easy team to talk about.
Very easy.
A lot of people felt like they should have won that final.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they had game 5. It was theirs to lose, and then they threw it.
That's true.
They just didn't play their comp properly. We've reviewed that game a number of times, and it's just like they had the 1-3-1. They just had to play through side lanes, use their globals, and then they had the game, but they kept taking bad fights, and then they ended up losing. I think that what I keep saying about that is like the Mad Lions deserve to win, but I think that many people looked at Rogue and sat there and thought that if this game was to play out like 100 times, Rogue was more likely to win it.
For sure.
Right? And it's one of those things where like, you could make an argument that you think Rogue is a stronger team than Mad, but I don't think for any reason you can sit there and say that they deserve to win that final based on how they played in their game 5. And I think that they're going to be really frustrated. And whenever you look at this team, all I do is I feel really bad because I look at Han Summer, I look at Odawamne, and the number of times like
they've been so close.
They've been
but
so
not
close.
Quite.
Like Han Summer was in the finals with Misfits where he got smashed. And like I rewatched the LCS did that great piece on the Misfits best of 5 versus SKT, and you heard how like they felt like they could actually win. And I'm like, oh man, imagine if Han Summer had that opportunity. And like it's one of those things where Han Summer is the sweetest guy ever. Like if anyone ever has the opportunity to meet, he's kind of shy, but he's so friendly. He is such a joy to speak to, and he loves the game so much, and he works incredibly hard. And like once you meet him, you just kind of want to see him succeed. And I thought for him and for Odawamne that this would be their opportunity to finally get that one trophy under their belt. And then they lose it. And you can't help but feel bad for them.
Well, and I think
because they've been trying for so long.
Yeah, and it's doubled up by the fact that this is the first split in a long time. The G2 didn't make it to the finals. The G2 were not the expected favorites in final by default because they didn't make it there. And a lot of people feel like that's, a flash in the pan or a fish in a pan, as Cadril would say, where it's just a one split thing. And we'll see if that ends up being true, but making it to finals was already such an achievement in Odawamne's career, historically.
True.
Making it to 5 games in a final, also an achievement for both these players, because Han Sama just got click clapped like most people did.
Oh, Han Sama like bot capped in the final, remember? He was smurfing.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That was a rough one for Carzzy.
Yeah, that's why everyone was worried about the bot lane of Mad going to MSI, right? And then Carzzy had a great tournament, and then you're like, if Kazi did that at MSI, how good is Hans, right? And like, obviously, like that's not quite what you should do, but like that some fans are going to be doing that, right? And like, I think that you should be nothing but excited for Rogue because Trimby's only now gotten more experience. Hopefully, he now knows how to work better with Hans Summer. This team is clearly super talented. Inspired, I think, is still the best jungler in Europe, and even if the meta changes, I don't think that's going to change for him. So like,
Trimby's getting better too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like everything is Pog.
Rogue is a front. I think it's just clear to say Rogue is in the expected top 3, rightfully so, until proven otherwise.
I'm Pog for Rogue. Very excited.
Hell yeah. Good on you, Rogue. You're exciting. On the other hand, back to the drama llama.
Okay.
Wow. SK Gaming. Let's talk. Weird stuff's been happening here, folks. And of course, you probably heard about these rumors. And if you haven't, good on you for not being on social media all the time. You probably live a much healthier life than I do. But I'm addicted because this stuff is gold. This is my Kardashians for the basic of you out there. Gen X, top lane. Treats in the jungle.
Yep.
Wow. MVP, Rookie of the Split candidate support. Blue is out this first week. They've subbed in another mid laner. Condolences to Blue. We'll talk about Blue as if
2 hours. That's how you pronounce it.
2 hours.
Renato originally told me that it was 2 horse, and I was like, "Are you sure?" And then he's like, "No, I was being trolled. It's 2 hours." That's how you're supposed to pronounce it.
So they have a sub mid laner for this week, and potentially, we don't have a lot of details. It's a medical issue that has forced Blue not to be a part of the roster. So we'll
wishing you a speedy recovery.
Wishing you a speedy recovery, Blue. No shade to Blue. We'll talk about him as honestly as we can, but obviously none of this. Just recover as quick as you can, man. We want to see this roster in whatever form it was planned on. Jezu, 80 carry, and the kicker.
Jez is back in support.
Jesus is back in support. It's not a Paragon anymore. It's a Jesus. This is at least the second, potentially the third time that this has happened.
I feel kind of bad for him. So it's one of those things where like, I don't feel bad. I do not know what happened, but in the past, for those that don't know, Mickey was subbed out on Misfits and Jesus came in, right? And I think that a lot of people now look at this situation, they're like, oh, he's just the coach that subs out his support so that he can still play in pro.
I mean,
right?
To be fair, if it happens, and you know what I mean? Like, I feel for him because you're right. Because maybe this is
because I think in this situation, Treats was tried to be very vocal about the fact that like this wasn't Jez's idea. This is like a team decision where we wanted him to do this.
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
Like, and if that was the case, then like it just sucked. Because I don't know or remember what happened to that Misfits situation. No, but it's one of those things like, I'm sorry, Jez, but the perception right now is that you can't help it, right? Like people look at the surface.
You just gotta play.
People look from the outside and they're like, okay, so you benched one support and then you played, and now you're benching another. Well, you're moving another support and you're playing again. I know as much as like context matters, like when you look at it without any, it doesn't look great.
I mean, yeah, you can end up in the wrong place at the wrong time once, but the second time it starts to look a little sus.
So like, I'm sorry, it sucks for you right now, and the only way that you can kind of fix it is to play super well, which is it's going to be tough because obviously, as you already said, Treats was the MVP of that roster, right? And for many of us, he was in the conversation for MVP because he ultimately is the reason why SK was in playoffs, I believe anyway.
He and Gen X rising up in the beginning of the split, it wasn't as much Gen X, but he and Gen X were like the defining playmakers on that roster.
Right.
And admittedly, it was a lot of Gnar, and people got tired of like, oh, just Gen X on Gnar or whatever. But like the reason that they won so many games, plain and simple, was more often than not Treats, some of the times Jesus, making some crazy miracle play that everyone agrees should not have been possible. Whether it was a Hex Flash over the wall, some crazy Rel engage, some crazy Gnar engage, you know? And the fact that he is now learning a new role in between spring and summer, again, very short turnaround time. Maybe in SK's mind, they're like, oh, imagine Gen X and Treats together all the time because he can leave lane whenever he wants because he doesn't have a lane because he's a jungler.
It's true. I mean, maybe he can also micromanage. It was something that when I've had the opportunity, I mean, I've played with Upset. And when we played with him, he was like he micromanaged a lot of us, right?
There's a certain brand of pro players that whenever we play Flex or whatever with, that you know that they're there's two versions. There's the pro players that just pick weird stuff and don't talk to you and go 9-1 in 2 minutes, Wonder, Talon jungle. And then there's the pro players who want to win, so you don't play League of Legends anymore. He's playing StarCraft with voice controls. You're literally just micromanaged into oblivion.
That's no disrespect to Upset. I actually love playing like that.
It's great.
It's really fun because you realize that like you end up doing all the right things, right? But I'm just saying that like as an example, it's hard, but Treats could actually just tell Jez is like, I need you to roam with me now. Hey, we're going to go for a gank mid, or like we're going for a gank top. Can you push in mid and come top, right? And like maybe that voice is really valuable in this roster, which seems to be what a lot of the team was talking about. Like Gen X, a lot of them were very vocal on social media about how like they believe that this gives them the best chance to make playoffs again. And so like I can't really refute them because I don't have any evidence to suggest otherwise. I don't know what happened in the offseason. And Gen X, he said that there were troubles in the jungle. Their relationship with Tinks wasn't good. And what they wanted to do wasn't working. So they've made changes in the hopes of being better. And I can't fault them for that. Like, these are the options that he even, Gen X even said they tried to get Skeens. That wasn't an option for them. And so they couldn't do that. And I'm sure that would have been the ideal, get an experienced jungler that they believe in, and then keep Treats in support. But that was an option. So they did what they could. And like, yeah, it's difficult in that transition. And all I can really do is hope for the best, because I don't think that this roster makes playoffs. I don't think that Jez's is an upgrade to Treats in any way. And I think that while Treats is super talented, I recently started playing jungle Udyr because I was auto-filled in jungle and I didn't want to keep playing Nocturne. And that was a very easy time. Udyr jungle is very easy. It's very straightforward.
You farm the camps and you go fast.
And then you gank. And also with the slightly increased gank timers now, you have more time to gank, right? And if you have like basic understanding of pathing, but like also that's just like the bare minimum of what you need to do on like Udyr.
And
right?
there's a lot of other junglers in the meta.
There's a lot of other junglers, and also like Inspired and EUphoria, the type of junglers that will punish you for whatever decision you make. Oh, you gank bots, you've just lost your top side points. You don't think that's important? Well, imagine that when I come back again and again, right? So I'm worried for Treats. I think he's got a stacked competition going up against him, and I'm not super confident on this roster. I understand why they've done it. The only thing we can do now is hope that
I understand why they said they've done it. I can't say I understand 100% everything that's going on. But as someone who doesn't know, and I think we're both in this department, without all the intimate details, you can take at face value that this is, from what they believe, the best chance they have to make playoffs. Treats rather, could be a great jungler. Who knows? I think expecting him to be one right out the gate is rough. I think expecting Jezis, after so much time away from pro, to be competitive with the top end support pool in our league is also probably unreasonable. And again, we could be wrong, but I think SK, we'll see, I guess, is the best that you can have it.
Sure.
And I'm inclined to think probably a mess until proven otherwise on paper. Whatever the logic is, Jez is subbing himself in, their best player getting opting into a role swap. It's worked before, the old perks caps swap, but that's like really, we're grasping at straws here.
Bottom three is kind of like my initial expectations to this roster. Sorry, SK, but I think that you're going to get pushed out.
All right. Now we're going to talk about the last two, and we're going to talk about these two together, because this was the peak of League of Legends drama.
It was.
The weirdest offseason we have ever had. This was the defining, like, before we even get to any other roster changes, these two teams were what made this offseason so weird.
Right.
This alone would have made this one of the craziest offseasons of all time, because Fnatic, their roster is now Adam from K-Corp. Shout out K-Corp, Master Champions. Bwipo is now in the jungle. Niski upset Hylissang. Where is Selfmade gone? He's gone to the new Vitality with SLT, Selfmade, Leader, Crownshot, and Lebrov. This is nuts, Vedi.
Yeah.
How do you feel about what immediately stands out to you about this? Because we've lived with it now for a few weeks, but if you stepped away from all the LEC drama just to watch MSI, you didn't catch up on any of this. This has to be a shock when you're like, wait a minute, that guy's the Fnatic jungler, right?
So my initial thoughts of Fnatic were their roster is now worse because you lost Selfmade, and Selfmade's very good. Selfmade, I think some people think that he didn't have a good split, but I think he did. He definitely had some games where he really ran it down. Don't get me wrong, but Selfmade's still Selfmade. He was still very good, in my opinion, in spring.
Yep.
The bigger Fnatic issues were more that they seemed to go for every single fight and they couldn't turn that aggression off, right? So it was more of a team issues rather than, for me, a specific Selfmade issue. So him being gone and going to a different team, I think was problematic for Fnatic. That was my initial impression. However, I spoke to Yamato, and he apparently said that Bwipo is a very good jungler.
Bwipo also said that Bwipo is a very good jungler.
So now, again, obviously bias is a factor. And Yamato,
like, what are you going to say? He sucks.
Yamato even prefaced it by saying like, I think that he says that he could be biased, but he thinks that he's very good.
Yeah.
Now, I won't go into any more detail because Yamato did share with me some more stuff, but I don't want to overstep my bounds. And hopefully we can just talk to Yamato next week and we can get more insight from him. But I think that the things you have to be concerned about is how does Adam compete against many of the top laners? You could argue there aren't that many great top laners in Europe, so the competition is not going to be that bad for Adam. And hopefully he can bring out, like he was the
Darius
is the
guy.
word. Yeah. Is it progenitor? He was the guy that did it first.
Yeah,
I forget what the word is.
It's a heavy-handed word,
but
the inventor of Darius Top.
But he's been a Darius one-trick for a very long time. And I'm not saying that he still is a one-trick, right?
See, Bronzies. Darius is a good champion.
Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
But
I think that Adam has showcased that he's a hyper carry top laner that can work with both resources and without them. At least that's what he did on K-Corp. And he was a joy to watch. I love listening to the French casters. Adam. It was so good.
I know. You brought it up. You frequently brought it up. You're like, why can't we just shout things? They just shout things and it's so sexy.
It's so good. I loved it when they went, Adam, ooh la la. It's so good. Shout out to French casters. They're amazing.
That's fantastic. It's an amazing broadcast.
So yeah, to like talk about Fnatic, the big question is, what have they done with their aggression, right? Ultimately, that was the biggest problem for them. They had one style that teams figured out and could punish. Schalke punished it really hard in playoffs, and now the matter is, have they been able to shift? With Selfmade not being in the jungle and Bwipo replacing him, I don't think they suddenly become less aggressive because Bwipo has only ever been an aggressive player, and Adam also likes to 1v9 if he gets champions like Olaf or Darius in the top lane, right? So does their aggression suddenly slow down? I don't think so. With Yamato still in the coaching position, I believe that is still a very strong spot for them. The question is, what does that aggression now look like? And I don't know, because that was their biggest problem in summer, and they couldn't really deviate or shift away from that.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing will be to see, again, we've talked much more to Bwipo about his role stuff than we have to Treats, so I'm inclined to have more faith in it. But maybe if I talk to Treats more, I would also believe in that one more. So what I'll say is I'll give the same skepticism, have to see how a player does moving into the role. I think in the same way we talk about like Gen X Treats, wow, suddenly now a pair that gets to work together, two of the biggest factors in this team's success. We can say the same thing about Bwipo Hillisang.
Bwipo Hilly, for sure.
The fact that both those guys get to roam now could be really good for Fnatic. And
that is a death duo, if I've ever seen one.
Someone is dying when they rock up to your lane. I don't know who it is, but someone is dying. And on the subject of Adam, like we're gonna have to see how he grows in that position. He's a very young player. Obviously.
I'm excited for him though. Rookies is always good, and rookie top laners in particular, they're hype. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'll say that as a final note, it's like just to get your gauge. Is it fair, do you think, to set higher expectations for this Fnatic roster than from what they did in Spain?
I would keep them top 5.
I think that's tough for Fnatic fans. I think Fnatic fans probably want more, but I think that's reasonable because it is still a rebuilding year at the end of the day.
I mean, like 4th is definitely within their reach. If you think like they lost to Schalke, could they beat Schalke now? Yeah. The question is, do you think that Vitality is better than Fnatic is? Which is like up to your discretion. Personally, the problem for me is I haven't done enough research on SLT. I don't know enough about this guy in the top lane. I don't know what he brings to the team, how he plays yet. So it's kind of unfair of me to just sit there and say like, yes, Vitality is going to be better or worse than Fnatic. What I can say is like expectations based on the roster that they have, simply with Selfmade and Crownshot playing together again, I'm excited. Right, why would you not be, right? And when I look at the other rosters, I see no reason why that duo alone isn't good enough to put them in top 5.
Yeah, and the narrative, switching over to Vitality here, and Fnatic, we'll see what they can do. We'll see if they surpass expectations. The narrative that I have for Vitality, we got LIDER on standby, so we'll get to the interview question shortly. But the narrative I have is this is the revenge roster. Crownshot has to be SK. Selfmade has to beat Fnatic. LIDER has to beat Misfits. None of them are going to back this up, but for the first week until none of them back this up, I'm going to sell this narrative like it's gold. It's probably not true. Probably none of them care. They just want to be good players. But this is the vengeance team.
I like it.
The Bees are like Vitality. They've been stepped on for too long. You know, like the Bees are coming back.
And imagine, right? And then you also get the people that have been benched in there. You put EUphoria, you put Sven support, and it's just it's just the angry five.
Just the furious five. It's Kung Fu Panda, baby. They need a really chunky coach, and we can just round the whole thing out.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where, like, how can you not be excited about this roster? Lebrov's a player that I think many people have been excited for a long time. He hasn't really stood out yet. I think that
he had a few moments in a few games, but he hasn't found that consistency.
Yeah, I mean, they finished 10th, so it's hard to sit there and say, let's look at all the highlights from Lebrov. But like, now he's on a fresh roster. He's playing with both veterans and a rookie in the form of SLT and the return of LIDER. I know that LIDER's champion pool is the biggest topic of discussion right now. And LIDER himself said that I'll play what champions I think make the most sense. And like, we're seeing Viego in the meta right now. I think Gwen mid is also very good. So like, maybe it's his time to shine. I don't know. Like, all I can sit there and say is that LIDER self-made is probably a very strong mid-jungle duo. I believe that they've been playing together for a long time, actually. Yeah. Like, whenever I tuned into self-made's stream, he was playing with LIDER just naturally when he was on Fnatic last year. So I think that they're aggressive and they have a lot of ways to carry. The question is, what does SLT bring? How does he fit into this dynamic? And will this team collapse? Yeah. Will they be able to think? Because that's the other big debate, right? Like, there's a lot of strong personalities, right? Will this team maintain health and a happy relationship throughout the split?
There's always one team that people are skeptical of, and I think based on history and rumors, and I don't know how much validity there is to any of this, but people expect this to be the volatile team, and we'll see. We'll end up seeing what happens here. But you talked about jungle mid. I like talking about the jungle mid. We'll learn more about SLT as we get to watch more on stage. But I think let's keep that trend going. Let's jump into an interview with LIDER. Let's see what he has to say about jungle mid, about Vitality, about his offseason, and expectations for this team and lineup. Welcome to the show, none other than the brand new mid laner for Vitality. Melee champion legend, assassin connoisseur, absolute smurf of LEC in-houses for anyone who watched those before the start of the season. None other than LIDER. LIDER, welcome. How does it feel to be playing back in the LEC, my man?
Feels wonderful. I don't need to flip burgers in ERLs anymore, so I can actually improve a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, and you spent I feel like it feels like your training arc. You know what I mean? Like, because you obviously before coming in to this Vitality lineup, you had a little bit of time on Misfits. The split ultimately fell a little bit short. You went down to Mouse. You guys dominated a bunch domestically. Had your mixed results at EU Masters, sometimes good, sometimes not as good. But now you're back in the LEC. What is different for you this time around compared to Misfits in 2019? What's different about you as a player?
Me as a player, obviously, I think I refined myself more, consistency-wise, and I worked on different areas than what I was good at. Like, I communicate better and what not in game, stuff that really doesn't show from the outside perspective, but stuff that I value personally as a player. I think that's the biggest case. Now I've gotten more experience in ERL as well, even though it was maybe a little bit too much experience because I played 3 splits or something. I don't know how many it was, but 4 splits actually. I played 4 splits in ERLs. I think that was too many, but that's fine. I think I've honestly, as troll as it sounds, champion pool is bigger as well, right? So even though it's consists of melee champion, it's still bigger. So it's just easier to know what to pick in different scenarios now compared to comfort. So that's would be the biggest difference, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the intangibles are super important. I think that's the kind of stuff that's really going to show in a team environment and kind of for Vitality as a whole. But just to go into the champion pool meme, because I think that's what you're known for, right? Like, you are the melee champion assassin guy. And I think there's nothing that says you can't be known for other stuff too, but I think that's the first thing that comes to mind when people think of you. You were the solo queue master, you were the Yasuo god. I remember Deficio, before he was a team manager, showing me your highlights back in 2017. Some random YouTube channel had been LIDER, the next faker, the melee champion master. And you've kind of held onto that identity. So when we talk about you as a player coming into Vitality, do you think that it's still reasonable for people to expect you to be the guy who will more often than not prioritize the melee champions, prioritize the assassins? Is that still who you think you are as a professional player?
I mean, I would say so, yeah. I mean, you can look at my past competitive splits even recently, like most of my champions have been melee, but it doesn't mean that I will only play melee, right? I will pick whatever I think is going to win us the game. That's how it's going to be.
Yeah, and that's
And
like,
now I have a bigger pool to choose from melee champions, so what I can win with.
Do you feel like your biggest buff is the fact that Riot Games has just kept putting out melee champions that are good? Like you can play Viego mid lane now, you can play Yone. Like since we last saw you, there's been like 3 to 4 mid laners or 3 to 4 mid lane champions that either have been buffed into relevance or are like coming back into mid lane that are melee. Do you feel like the balance team is helping you out just a little bit?
Yeah, I think I'm being blessed by Mark Yetter or whoever is behind it. Thank you, Mark Yetter. But I don't know. I guess I am pretty lucky with it, with the patch, especially in this split compared to before. Before it was Azir Corki meta, right? Which were the overtuned champions. Now it's more like, I don't know, I would say the meta is kind of balanced. It feels like you can play anything in different scenarios all the time. So, but it seems like melee champions are really strong, right? You can look at LPL and stuff like, besides Orianna, they're still playing like melee champions, right? Like Gwen Viego, Lee Sin, all of these champions. So yeah, I would say I'm in a really lucky spot.
I mean, it's hype to get you kicked off, to get you started, to have your second kind of debut back into the LEC. And I'm curious for you, this is big. And I think a lot of times in the off season when people see new rookie mid lane talents, you were kind of the guy on a lot of people's that a lot of people were talking about essentially to come in. So sometimes when a new player would come in, they'd be like, what about LIDER? Where is LIDER? Where is LIDER? Why isn't LIDER on this team? Why isn't LIDER here? Like you were always the guy that felt like he was next in line to kind of come up. And now you're finally getting that shot here again on Vitality. What was this offseason like for you? How did this communication work? Did this surprise you at all? Were you ready to be playing back in LEC? Did you expect this offer to kind of come through, or did this take you off guard?
No, it didn't really take me off guard. I was always kind of ready and prepared, and I knew like the chance would come sooner or later. Like, I think I'm good enough for LEC, right? So, but then again, I would not want to join any team. I would want to wait for the best opportunity as well. On top of that, even though the worst opportunities didn't even consider me as their first priority, the same thing for me. They're not even my first priority. So it's like hand in hand. But I think this Vitality offer is probably the best one I could have ever, the best roster I could have ever gotten throughout my whole career, like the last 2 years. When you look at even Fnatic in 2019, SK and XL offers, Misfits roster, everything. I think this is the best roster I can ever be in from the chances I've gotten. So I'm really grateful for that, and I'm really happy that I wasn't the first priority of the other LEC teams, and they weren't my first priority.
That's good. Do you feel like there could have been a world where, let's say, you were the first priority for some of those teams that you weren't excited about, that you take that offer? Are you glad now in hindsight, or do you still kind of wish you had gotten a shot sooner?
I mean, I obviously wish I could have gotten a shot sooner, but there's no reason for me to dwell on it. Like, I feel like if there's something that is like going not my way all the time, like in the end, it will go my way, if I just keep doing what I'm doing. So, and this is it, like this is going my way, I would say, like with the roster and how we've been doing and everything. I don't think I would have taken the chance in the other teams as well, especially with the rosters they presented to me by the time they were giving me the offers. So like, I'm not trying to sound arrogant or something. It's like, me as a player, I know how good I am, but obviously to the outside perspective, like they don't see the same thing as I see, right? But then again, I don't really care about the outside perspective, what they think about me. I care more about what the top players think about me, and I think, and they've expressed that they have a positive opinion on me. That's all that I need.
That's true. I mean, that's a lot of the reason why a lot of people were surprised that you weren't around, is because there are so many pro players that have been consistently kind of talking you up as a mid laner that absolutely deserves that shot. And to what you're talking about, like, if it's always crazy to me when people are gonna give you crap for believing in yourself. It's like, how are you gonna make it in competition if you don't believe that you have what it takes? Like, obviously, there's a time for being humble and recognizing your mistakes, but if you don't believe you're going to make it, you're not going to make it. So good on you for, despite, the public or whoever is kind of talking you down or talking you out, that tenacity, that perseverance, I think, like, good on you, paid off. I love to see it. The other thing I want to talk about is this roster as a whole. I'm very excited for the roster as a whole, but I think I have to immediately talk about Jungle Mid. I have to talk about you and Selfmade, because I think when people see you two as a duo on the Rift, 2 words come to their mind. One is talented, the other is toxic. I don't think that other one matters, but I think it's funny that that's what they think. But talk to me about talking about Jungle Mid. Is this, when you think about how Vitality is playing, how this Vitality roster wants to play, should people be looking at you and Selfmade? Like, are you guys going to be the core of this team?
Honestly, I think it's kind of what first the people would think about, right? Like Selfmade especially, he's been at Worlds, he almost beat top Esports, was unlucky, and like he kind of got kicked from Fnatic, and then he joined the Vitality, right? And then I'm a super controversial player, and like even though it's negative, people are still talking about me, So that like it will obviously some people will be like attracted to it, like negatively or positively, and people will obviously look forward to it. But you can call it a core, but I think the other players as well can be a core as well. Like let's say nobody of us had the reputation, and we were only as players. Then I feel like everyone in our team could be a core. Like bot lane could be a core, top side could be a core, anything. So, but I think for sure people will still look at us as the core.
Yeah. And I mean, we will see in how the team's performance shapes up. I think you're right that certain degree, it's like you guys have a reputation. There are expectations on your shoulder, good or bad. People want to watch you play melee champions in mid lane, right? And I think that that's always going to draw eyes. But ultimately, if Crown Chow is popping off every game, if SLT is popping off, if any of these people are popping off, yeah, I think that absolutely these are guys who can get that time in the spotlight. How has coming into this roster, joining scrims been for you? Because while a lot of teams were at MSI, how long have you guys actually been practicing leading up to the split? How much time have you actually had getting ready for this first week of competition? Because in theory, you guys could have been practicing for a long time, but I have no idea how long it took to sort out the Selfmade debacle, how long it took to get you into the gaming house or into these scrims. How much practice have you guys had?
It's been little under a month, I would say, but we still had to get used to everything, and we're still like 5 player, or like I am playing for the first time with my teammates. Selfmade is playing for the first time with his teammates, and the top lane as well. Salu is playing first time with his teammates as well. Like it's only Labrov and Crowny that has been playing together for a couple of weeks, but I think we've like meshed well really fast together, and I think we're improving really, really fast. We're doing good now. Like at the start of the week, strengths were getting like clearly shown, but there were no breaks to some parts of the strengths, right? Like what makes our players good, like what they're making good, is just taking the good things in the right moments, and we are trying to do it in the right moments consistently now.
Yeah, and so when you look kind of at this roster to set expectations for the fans, I think Vitality fans have been disappointed for a few splits now, and it was easy to kind of discount some of the failures because Vitality org had, so many roster problems, visa issues, people, unable to play. But now it finally feels like from spring to summer, they've made these big adjustments. I don't know what Vitality fans want leader. I'm going to level you. I have no idea, but I imagine it's not 10th place again. So what is your expectation for this roster, for this team? What do you see the highs for this team? Where do you want to be with this lineup?
I think everyone's expectations in this team, at least, is that we make playoffs. I think it's kind of doable, easily doable, but personally, I will always aim high when it's realistic. And right now, with how the meta is and how the teams are, I would say regular split top 2 is even possible. Even top 1 is possible. So I'm not going to set my expectations to that, but it's something that I wouldn't be surprised if it happens as well. But the expectations is like top 4, kind of top 5, top 4, for me at least.
Hey, I like the top one. I like the top two. I respect though hedging your bets a little bit, pulling back. I like that you're shooting for more. I like that this team has so much ambition, and I'm ready to see how you guys perform. Last question here, rounding it out. You guys have a bit of a mixed bag here in week one. Rogue definitely going to be considered a very strong opponent. Obviously, Schalke a bit up in the air. Misfits were good last season. We're getting better, but I'm curious, how do you feel about your week one schedule? What are you focused on? What do you expect for the results?
I think it is relatively easy schedule for week one. Like Schalke is kind of in the same boat as us, right? Like they changed their mid jungle, so they still need some time to mesh well together, and they have a rookie as well in mid lane. And then there's like Rogue, right? They're obviously good. It will be the toughest opponent and the number one test that we're gonna get in LEC. And then there's Misfits, which is, I guess they looked fine, but it's not someone that I would be like worried about or anything. They're just there. But like realistically speaking, I think it should be 2-1. But I think, like I said, it's a best of one, right? So anything can happen. It can even be a 3-0 or even a 0-3. That would suck, but it can happen.
Or a 1-2. Why not? Let's cover every base just in case. For the narrative enthusiasts out there, is the leader takes revenge on Misfits storyline something we should chase at all? Do you care about Misfits? Is it going to feel any better to beat Misfits than it will to beat any other team? Or do you just like, eh?
No, not really, because the problem with that was I liked every player in there. And now there are new players, and I don't harbor any feelings towards them, negative or positive. It's like they're just competition, so it's just another competition. But honestly, like I don't really care about them. That's all, They're just there for me. They're just another team.
Okay, I just had to check, just in case we can get that little more juicy storyline, because for sure we're gonna have to talk about Selfmade versus Fnatic. I just needed to check if we needed to. Also talk about Leader versus Misfits, Crown Shot versus SK. You guys are the revenge lineup in my head, taking shots at everybody. Thank you so much, Leader, for taking the time to talk to me today, man. It's really good to have you back in the league. I'm excited to see what you can do. I'm excited that Melee champions are meta. Fingers crossed, my friend, that there is no Corky's ear, both for the viewers and for you. Hopefully none of those champions come back for a long time. But otherwise, thanks so much, man, for coming on. And good luck in scrims leading up to this first week.
Thank you very much. It was fun. Have a nice day.
You too. Thank you, Leader, so much. We'll see if it is the 3-0, the 2-1, the 1-2, or the 0-3, just to have all of our bases covered here for the new Vitality. Let's not set the expectations too high. Vedius, this week begins our Super Week.
Yep.
It's me, it's you, it's Cadril, it's Quickshot. Ender's gone. It's
Medic
sad.
is also there.
Medic is there. I'm sorry, Medic. I love you. I don't know why I didn't say Medic.
I don't know. You thought that I was Quickshot's partner.
No, maybe I'm just jealous of the Medi-Vedi thing, and I'm just like subconsciously writing him out so that I can have all the color canisters. Regardless, sorry, Medic. Let's talk about the first week, because it's going to be a super week. It's going to be totally nuts. We're kicking off with Mad versus G2, which is already going to be the rematch. G2 has been sitting here waiting for their opportunity to strike back.
Mad Lions probably has one of the best records against G2. Probably any of our teams. I think Schalke is the only other one that has a pretty good record against them.
Which is so weird.
Which is weird.
How does that happen?
Yeah. But
good on Schalke, though.
Mad Lions have beaten them in 2 best of 5s, which I think, when you kind of look at the Caps era of G2, that no other team has beaten them twice.
That's
in
true.
A best of 5.
Take that, China. Send the same team to finals twice.
RNG's lucky they didn't play against Mad.
Isn't that right? Aren't you sweating in your boots right now? All 6 or 7 Chinese teams that we're terrified of, and the rest that might also be scary, but we'll never know because you're not going to make it because your league's too competitive. Our league's a mess. I'm just kidding. We've got a strong top side. All I want to know, Vidi, is like, what matchups are you actually like the most excited for? What matchups do you think are going to be the most telling, the most interesting to show us the relative strengths?
I mean,
of teams?
week 1 is always the best because teams, like, all of your predictions will be wrong.
True.
All of them will be, because teams are nowhere near as prepared as they normally should be because they isolate themselves into this little scrim meta. They have the little bubbles that they play with.
But one team always gets it right, and it's like we think they're really good for 2 weeks, and then there's a patch change and they suck.
Exactly. Yes. You got it. It's the classic, like, I'll never forget. Do you remember the Giants 5-0? When Giants and someone else who was not supposed to be good was really good. And they sat at the top of our standings, and it was 5-0, 4-1. And we were like, wow.
Giants.
This is so insane. They're so good now. And then all of a sudden, everyone realized, wait, no, they just figured out the meta faster than everyone else did. And then they finished the split at like 7-11. So they started at 5-0 and then they just lost every other game.
Not quite McDonald's, but 7-11 will do.
It was, and that happens, right? Teams who figure out the meta the fastest usually get early wins and get an advantage. And because teams will only scrim certain other teams because they're little bubbles of, I don't know, whatever. I don't understand their scrim culture.
I mean,
but
people aren't going to scrim the people they're going to play in the first week. They'll try to find the best scrim partners possible. We've had that happen on a lot of metas past where like G2 and Fnatic like just scrimmed each other, you know, and it leads to weird metas. Sometimes
which sucks for Fnatic because Fnatic play Mad and Rogue in their very first week.
So the generic bangers list, so just top teams versus top team. We got Mad versus G2 day 1, Mad versus Fnatic day 2, and Rogue versus Fnatic day 3. So there's like there are your generic quote unquote high tier matchups. And again, we'll see how good Fnatic are, but on paper, at least historically, those are kind of like what you look at to be the big crazy matchups.
It's often why Fnatic can struggle at the beginning of the split too.
True. That said, I don't care about that. I'm excited to see what new Fnatic does. Don't get me wrong. I want the weird matchups.
Yeah.
What are the weird ones? I'm ready for Vitality Schalke. That one I think is going to slap.
That could be good, yeah.
Because I want to see the roster changes versus the roster changes. Because like technically Rogue Vitality is day 2. And that's also cool, but like I think unreasonable to expect Vitality to beat Rogue. But like Schalke Vitality is anybody's game.
I mean, G2 versus Schalke 2. We know they're in a best of 1. G2 doesn't have a great track record against
winning
Schalke.
Record.
Yep. So that one's going to be hype. I think that like I'm just generally excited for the Vitality Misfits, Vitality Rogue, and then Vitality Schalke, just because I want a benchmark for Vitality. You know, like they literally get everyone. They get Schalke, who finished 4th last split. So in theory, they're kind of competing with Schalke for that spot in the thing. They're also going up against a top team, so we can see how they do against Rogue on the top end, and they're playing against a bottom team in Misfits, right? Who finished in what 7th last split. So like they kind of get to play against everyone, not necessarily the best, not necessarily the worst, but they kind of get a nice mix of everyone. So I'm excited to see their trajectory throughout the weekend and who they're playing against. And how can you not be excited to see the return of LIDER accompanied by Self-Made and Crown Shot? So
it's so good.
It's good.
It's so good. Okay, not to hard force another storyline here, but you can tell I'm big on the revenge theme today. My banger of the week. It's a hidden banger. No one knows it's a banger, but it's going to slap. It's Excel versus Astralis. It is Nuke Duck versus Astralis. One man's story of revenge. Again, I'm just making this up. I have no idea if there's any beef here. I like it. I want this storyline to be true. NA was like, we had so much random like flame tweets. Alphari is getting benched. Like our roster changes are way more interesting than their roster changes. Don't get me wrong, but the amount of flame coming out of LCS is so good right now that I want our players to be like, I want Nuke to come out and be like, I'm here to obliterate Astralis.
You get Alpha
to the stars in the ground,
Excel
baby.
Makes the Alphari tweet like, this has been in the works for months. My revenge plan against Astralis has been coming.
Poor Jet. There's nothing he can say that will save him from the wrath of the fans. But he's made a great copy pasta, and it's great because I've recently, I have a bit of a history of making copy pastas for those that don't know, and it's just great when I get to copy other people. Yeah, when it's not you being the subject of the copy pasta. So that's what I'm saying. I'm here for the revenge storylines, even if they're not real. And again, until proven otherwise, when I say this player wants revenge, I usually preface it by saying that I'm memeing. Most of these players don't care.
I heard that Zanzara punched Nuke Duck in the face, and now they were...
According to rumors from unconfirmed sources, Zanzara... No, oh God. It's so easy, though. It's so tempting. You could just... Hey guys,
Whippo broke Self-Made's leg. That's why they're not on the same team anymore. Yeah, you know what I mean?
He got mad. He got so mad about that, bro. He said something about his Rengar.
Oh my word. Yeah, it was nuts, man. You can't say that. These are all rumors. Rumors, of course. Rumors.
Unconfirmed source. Unconfirmed source. To be fair, good on the rumor mongers out there. A lot of those rumors, as crazy as they were, turned out to be very true.
They were great.
All right, final
I mean,
matchup.
the Wooloo one caused insane drama. I loved that whole thing.
The Wooloo, yeah.
I mean, shout out to the players because apparently it caused a bit of drama for them. Where it's just like Niski had to go out and be like, "I loved Selfmade. I don't know," and it's like, "Oh, the plot thickens."
But who? And the tinfoil hats come on. But what if he had to say that?
Yeah.
What if?
It's great.
Okay. Anyway. The period in time where we rumor monger will end.
So
it ends at Friday when Ready Check starts. So be sure to turn in for Ready Check. We've got a ton of awesome games this week. You're going to get to watch us cast. It's a super week. We're gonna have.
I think you, Cadril, cast the first two, and then Medi for the last few.
Yeah, we open, and then you guys get the back.
I forget who gets the first three or whatever, but yeah.
I don't know. We get first.
You get the bangs.
Half. You get second half. There's 5 games. We'll figure out who takes the middle one. We can split halfway through the game. Maybe we can do a hot swap.
Of course, Ender not going to be with us this split.
Rest in peace, Mr.
I miss you,
Frierson. We miss you. We miss you, Ender. This has been Season 8, Episode 1 of EUphoria. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all next week for more exciting, or this weekend. We'll see you this weekend for exciting League of Legends action.
Cadril should be back next week, but if you hate him and you want me to stay,
you can start a poll.
You can make comments.
We're absolutely at the whims of the public. So if you want Cadril off the show,
hashtag Vedi greater than Cadril if you've watched all the way to the end of the podcast.
That's a long hashtag.
But it's not Vedi greater than Cade. Or Mark, Vedi greater than Mark with a K. Do Mark with a K. It's really important that you do Mark with a K. He hates it when you do Mark with a C.
All right, that was a lot there. This has been Season 8, Episode 1. We'll see you guys next week.